But the River Kwai and its tributaries harbored a killer even more lethal than the Japanese and our starvation diet. As an inevitable consequence of the lack of sanitation and the tens of thousands of bodies buried in shallow graves or dumped along in the jungle, the river system was loaded with cholera, bacteria, and the monsoon season became cholera season. As the heightened waters of the Kwai flushed Vibrio cholera throughout the land, this fearful disease cast a black shadow over the camp. Cholera arrived unseen and unheard, but soon had us in its grip. I was slow to hear about it, but I sensed something terrible was in the camp. More men were falling ill than usual, and the Japanese kept their distance, leaving us alone. They were scared to death of catching cholera themselves. So this wretched disease comes into camp. And you just don't think things can get worse. And they do. And you think that Alistair is going to avoid cholera, but he doesn't. Overnight, cholera struck me down. I woke up with explosive diarrhea and violent projectile vomiting. My ears were ringing as I felt dizzy. Cramps started in my bowels and soon spread all over my body as it rapidly dehydrated. I was drying from the inside out, shriveling like a picked grape left out in the sun. The cholera bacteria burrowed into the walls of my small intestine, producing toxins that sucked my vital salts and every ounce of water out of my body. I was unsure what was wrong, but I knew it was serious. I did not want to finish up with life drained out of me. I had always been extremely careful to drink only boiled water, so at first I was doubtful that it was cholera. I did not know much about it, but I knew that the first 24 hours were crucial. If you see through a day and a night, you would probably survive. Most men who succumbed did so in the first few hours, a horrible death, and so quick. Men who threw the bodies of cholera victims onto the funeral pyres in the morning could easily contract the disease, die, and be thrown on the pyre themselves that evening. They died in agony like crazed animals, and it was dreadful to see. I lay in my bed, unable to rise for work party. By then I was semi-conscious and I thought it was the end. I was hallucinating. Vivid red flashes stormed my eyelids. I knew I had to seek help. After psyching myself up, I managed to rise and wobble to Dr. Mathewson's hut. As soon as I walked in, he knew that I had cholera. It was a death sentence, and he was reluctant to tell me. Instead, he looked at me and simply said, "You'll have to be isolated. You'll be looked after." His orderlies led me to a cream-colored tent, like the ones we had used in the Scouts. As they peeled back the tent's front flap, a deathly stench leaped out. Unknown to me, this was the death tent, and I was the unlucky 13th occupant of a dimly lit space already full of men. When I saw their state, their eyes rolling back, rasping, unintelligible voices, their legs raised with knees bent, the bizarre telltale sign of a cholera sufferer, I knew that my number was up. The orderlies were putting me here to die. The fight was fading from me, and I lay down on the canvas floor with a sense of complete and utter desolation. But he did survive. Out of the 13 men that went into the tent, he was the only survivor.